truth, then we got a serious problem, Earl, on our hands right now.
A lot of people are coming forward as abductees and contactees recently. A lot of people that are in the UFO field. Robert Salas, who we know, through, he was in Montana. He was the head of a missile base, and everybody in the UFO field knows him as the guy that was ahead of a missile base, and they had a UFO hovering outside, and suddenly all the missiles went offline. It was like bit, 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 and they were all offline. And a few minutes went by, and they're frantically making phone calls or sending guys up on top of, this is an underground missile silo base. And sure enough, there's this object, a disc hanging over the facility. And then, of course, the missiles go back online. It's like blip, 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 blip. It's like, well, this is what we can do, and you guys are children playing with matches, but we want you to know that we can turn it off if we want to. It was sort of a show of power. And now recently he's come out as a abductee. He's an abductee. Robert Hastings, who wrote UFOs and Nukes, which actually, interestingly enough, featured Robert's story in that book and the video that he did. He came out as an abductee or a visitee. I've come out as a visitee. I had a close encounter with entities when I first became a field investigator. It was very difficult to talk about. I couldn't talk about it for a good 4 years. I started talking about it maybe a year ago very carefully, because people look at you differently. If you say that you've had a visit from extraterrestrial entities, there's a definite ridicule factor there. But Kathleen Marden has come out, and it was very encouraging to me when Kathleen came out with her story. She's the head of MUFON's ERT, the Experiencer Research Team, which I'm proud to be a part of. And Kathleen, I just thought, well, yeah, her aunt and her uncle were, Betty and Barney Hill, and the first abduction really that was on record. And Kathleen has come out the last couple of years or so, as it runs in families apparently. But a lot of people, it's an interactive phenomenon. If you get close to it, if you draw close to this phenomenon, it will become up close and personal to you. So there's a little warning or a caveat there. If you don't want to be paralyzed and have ET come and visit you, then maybe you should become a UFO investigator, or throw your life at this strange phenomenon the way that many of us have.
Well, I gotta ask you a question, because now the listeners are going to want to know. Now, I was in denial myself since the mid-'70s. And, back maybe 6 months ago, Earl, it hit me that I had something happen. And I have been in denial for way longer than 4 years. But I want you to explain to listeners, if you don't mind, what was your encounter? What happened? And how did it affect you?
I would love to tell your listeners. I feel very close to your listeners. I know that, I always trust you, Gary, and I feel honored to share my story with you and your people. I had been a field investigator. This was back in 2015. And I had been a field investigator for maybe a week. I think I had just closed my first case for MUFON, which was a Mylar balloon that somebody saw. It's a star-shaped Mylar balloon that was reflecting the sun, and the guy got a good photo of it, and I felt sort of full of my oats, because right off it was like, oh, that's a party balloon, a star-shaped party balloon. So I went and I closed the case, and I went upstairs to go to sleep. Now, my wife was already asleep. It was about midnight or so. And I had sort of a stack of pillows behind my back. And I got into bed. I was sort of semi-recumbent in bed, where I was sort of halfway lying down, halfway sitting up, was how I was comfortable sleeping. Our room flooded with light. Now, when this started happening, we had a cricket problem, right? We had crickets in the rafters. This was a house in Burbank, and it was this select group of houses that this guy built that were kind of rustic and almost looked like cabins. So we had these wooden rafters that were up in the ceiling, and crickets would like to get up in there, and they would chirp, and it could be annoying. But it became unnaturally quiet. It was almost like, the Get Smart show where you have the cone of silence.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of this unnatural quietness that came over the room. And I was not asleep. I was fully awake. I mean, I had just laid down in bed. And the room started flooding with this bluish light. And I felt peaceful. I didn't even question, well, why is this light flooding our room? I was feeling very peaceful. I was very at ease. And the wall that was in front of me, it was where our TV sat, started swirling around. It was sort of a sepia color. It wasn't like bright neon or anything like that. It was very subtle. But I noticed this swirling, almost like a whirlpool. I tried to move, and at this point, I could not move. I felt total paralysis. And the best I can say is that I went into some sort of hypnagogic state, sort of between dreaming and wakefulness. I watched the swirling on the wall. It kept on going, and the TV was no longer there. You could just see this light that was starting to come through. Well, the wall opened up, and there was a tall entity that was standing to the right. Now, I couldn't really see anything, any features on this entity, but it was the first thing I saw was sort of a shadow of a bipedal creature standing up to the right-hand side before the wall had swirled around. The next thing I knew was these four little small entities, and they were the proverbial gray aliens, the little gray guys with the black eyes. They slid up to my bed. Just to give you a little preamble to all of this, I'd heard about the CE5 thing and Stephen Greer's whole thing where, you meditate and you ask them to manifest to you. And I've been trying that. I sort of half-heartedly, I was sort of laughing at myself and doing that and rolling my eyes at myself because I didn't think it would work. But I thought, well, who knows? Maybe I'll see a UFO if I do that, because I'd never seen anything before. Well, apparently it worked really, really well. A little better than I had hoped it worked. So these entities slid up to my bed. I could not move. I'm a nurse, and I take care of quadriplegics. I've taken care of many quadriplegics, and that's the last thing I'd ever want to be. And I'm really realizing I can't move my arms. I can't move my legs. I can move my eyes. I couldn't yell or scream. Anyway, they slid up to my bed. Some of the memories I've lost, I believe, are probably, these memories tend to go, and I hear that from many different people. And I've gone back and forth. Maybe I should get hypnotically regressed, but I seem to remember enough that I don't want to pollute my actual memories. But they took blood and energy from me, is what I remember. I remember I was trying to communicate with them in my mind, and I knew enough about the phenomena that you would usually get a telepathic message. They would say, "We're not going to harm you. This will all be over soon, and don't be afraid." Well, I didn't get any message like that. These guys were just emotionless, and I remember their eyes were so close to me, and the eyes were there was something about the eyes that just even more so it just was put me in this trance state. As far as I know, it was maybe 15 or 20 minutes max. And they left the same way they came in. They slid backwards. And they were still looking at me when they were leaving. They weren't walking, they were ambulating, they were just sliding away back through the portal that they opened up in my bedroom wall. The wall started swirling back again. I could still see the tall guy as a silhouette towards the right. And but the wall eventually came back together, and there was still a light in our room. The light started fading, and then you could hear crickets again. As soon as I could move, I started shaking my wife, and I shook her awake. And her whole reaction was not very good. My wife was very angry, because I was screaming, and I shook her, and I probably woke up the neighbors. I was just afraid and freaked out. It just my baseline reality was just crushed in those 20 minutes or so that I had this experience. My wife's comment was, "Oh God, you joined this crazy UFO group, and now you're going insane, and this is what I have to look forward to." Oh my God, and that's kind of the gist of my experience. I didn't know a whole lot about the phenomena, when I was sending out my little message where, I want to be abducted, I want to meet you, come and take me, I want to meet you. I'm thinking, like Val Thor, if you know that story, or, I'm thinking humanoids that would take me on a little cosmic trip, and no, that's not what happened. It was closer to Whitley Strieber's story, although I don't think that I was probed, or at least I don't remember that, but it was horrifying enough. Now, 2 nights later, and my wife and I we just didn't talk about it after that. She thought I'd, had some sort of a mental collapse, and I didn't want to talk about it. I felt embarrassed about it. 2 nights later, my wife is the one who's waking me up. She's shaking me. Our room is flooded with light again, and she's sort of pacing back and forth alongside the bed, going, "Earl, you need to tell your little friends that they need to leave us the F alone." And she didn't say F, she's, the F word. And she said, "I already have insomnia as it is, and I don't need this in my life." And the light faded again, and we're both awake, and it's like, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, how does light come through the walls? Because it's not like there was a source for the light. That's the weird thing.
Now, hey,
it was
Earl.
Light without a source.
Now, Earl, we need to take a break again. It's getting near the top of the hour, so we're going to be off for about 7.5 minutes. So if it's anything you need to do, because we're going to do some commercials on the radio end, James is going to come back and give a little bit of Earth changes, UFO news, and then we'll be back with you. And then we're going to continue this conversation because, you know what? I want to even tell you a little bit about my encounter. And it is something that I buried for so many years in denial. And, the more I talk about it, the better I hate to say it, I feel. And I remember more and more as you really sit back and think about what really happened. Anyway, we're going to be back with Earl Grey. We're going to talk about, his music, his, endeavor about being around, aliens and UFOs, and then MUFON and a whole bunch more and reports. So stay tuned to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check our website out at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com.